Looking at the world economy today, one can see that economic power is shifting from west to east, with countries like and Japan. This is not the first time in history that we see a shift in global economic power. 500 years ago, Asia dominated the world. China and India together represented about 50% of the world's gross domestic product. But the Industrial Revolution changed the balance of power. By the time the middle of the 20th century came, the situation was reversed. Between 1950 and 1980, Western Europe and North America emerged as the world's advanced economies and accounted for 50% of the world's production. The continued shift in demographics and policies in countries around the world, however, continued to create economic transformations. More and more large corporations are moving their production to the emerging economies, creating more opportunities for local companies to grow and allowing more investments and capital within these countries. Today, China is the second largest economy in the world, and together with India, they already account for 20% of the world's GDP. And the current economic and financial crisis in Europe and the US is proving once again that no country or region is immune to change. And in a globalized world, every change, every crisis produces global consequences affecting us as a human family and the state of the planet, our home.
Our world is rapidly changing, economically, socially, politically and environmentally. Our continued progress have created many opportunities for growth, but at the same time have pulled us down with our consumerism, our waste and our environmental destruction. What is needed is to seek a balance where our desire for global prosperity is matched by our commitment to create a sustainable planet. I talked to Otto Schammer, senior lecturer at MIT, on what actions are needed in order to address some of these global challenges, here on Face to Face with Desi Anwar.
I meet Otto Schammer in Bali, where he's conducting an MIT-based executive training program for individuals concerned with transformation, whether for themselves, their organizations, or their communities. The transformational method that he teaches is the U theory, a theory he sets forward in his book, Teori U, Leading from the Future as it Emerges. I find his theory fascinating as it embraces the holistic notion of the need for self-discovery and self-understanding before we can truly create transformation and innovation, a concept that he refers to as pre-sensing. Otto Schammer also holds a PhD in economics and management from Wittenherdecke University, Germany, and I'm interested to know how he views Indonesia, the world, and what kind of new economy is needed to solve our global problems.
Hey. Hi, Otto. It's good to see you. Well, welcome to Bali.
Thank you.
But this is not your first time in Indonesia, is it, Otto?
No, it's not. So I have been here 3 times before. When I came here to my first visit, which was about 8 or so years ago, it must have been shortly after the first Bali bombing. There was a travel advisory, and the security community considered, that was shortly after Afghanistan wars started, considered this likely to be the next country to go up in violent conflict. And so that was the expectation back then. And if I compare that today, so today I'm coming here a few years later, maybe 7, 8 years later, and now Indonesia is the 3rd largest democracy on the planet. It's part of the G20. It's one of the most successful countries of the G20. Has been much more successful than the West in coming out of the financial crisis 2008, and today is considered by many a very interesting role model of development, not only economically, but also politically or culturally in terms of linking, bringing together diverse groups. So united in diversity is a challenge that many countries have, and yet which is done here in a way that seems to be quite successful. So from where I am sitting now, which is the United States, what do we have? Kind of we have a paralysis of the political process, kind of two parts, the country is split in two cultures, two political groups who block each other to make progress, and we as a country are unable to address the deep issues and challenges that we face as a society. So there is really a paralysis, and everyone knows it, and yet nothing is really happening. So from that angle seen, it's quite interesting in 7 years how much has changed.
So you've seen sort of the evolution of Indonesia as sort of dangerous to now perhaps dangerously beautiful.
Exactly, right? That's at least true from our angle.
Right. You mentioned that you currently live in Boston in the United States, and you feel that there is this sort of the paralysis, that's the word that you used. What do you see as happening there that is actually emerging there, which is different to perhaps the 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago that was not there?
Well, I think we see probably two things. One is that in the US, through globalization, you have now, maybe for the first time in a long time, a feeling of maybe now we are no longer of the winning side of globalization. We are losing stuff. All the industries that went to Asia, maybe that's a problem for us. So some people wake up for that. Then that's one element. Then you have another element that more people wake up to that we, in the general way we have constructed society, which is business, democracy and government, and also education and culture, that maybe something is moving in the wrong direction. And I think that we basically have three problems in society, which is particularly clear in the US, but it's also the case really in other countries. And the first problem can be summarized with the number 1.5. And it means that we live on 1.5, we have a footprint of 1.5 planets. So we only have one Earth, but you run an economy that's using 1.5 planet Earths. And that means that we are destroying nature at a rapid clip. And only in the last generation we have lost a third of our agricultural land. The second problem is summarized with the number 2.5. 2.5 billion people live below the poverty line globally. And so that means that a very significant number of our community is basically living outside the economic system. And we have not, in spite of all the efforts, we have not been able to change that. The third problem, so the first is the ecological divide, the second is the social divide, and this third problem is the inner, or you could say the spiritual divide, which has to do with growing numbers of burnout, of depression, but also stress and noise and what I found in WHO for the year 2000, they researched that 3 times as many people kill themselves, so are dying through suicide, than are being killed through others, through war or homicide or violent conflicts of any sort. So in spite of all the violence going on in our world, 3 times as many people kill themselves than are being killed through others. And if you look at that really shocking number, this is really a third problem. It's not violence against nature, not violence against others, it's violence against ourselves. And these 3 problems today we have in all societies, and you could say, what does it mean? It means that collectively, we as a larger system, we produce results that nobody wants. So we produce ecological destruction, you know, social exclusion, and inner problems that no one really wants, and yet that's what we collectively create. And that's what more and more people wake up to. So there is a generally feeling today, not only in the US, but in many places, that something is going wrong, and maybe the Mubarak is not only sitting, so maybe we have our own versions, but in our case, it's not a person, it's a system that isn't working, and that somehow needs to be changed. How? We don't know. Most people don't know, but that is a question now on the table.